This is the last in a series on jazz jam sessions, at least that I can think of, and today I want to talk about drummers and bass players. Now, to be honest, these are the musicians I feel like I need to help the least and can help the least, because I'm not a drummer, nor am I a bass player. But there are a few things I could say that might be helpful to young drummers and young bass players coming up who want to play in a jam session. Of course, the same thing is true for you that's true for piano players. You're stuck in the back and you're basically there to make everyone else sound good and not necessarily yourself. But for drummers and bassists, that's more, expected. Piano players expect to be allowed to shine a little bit. Drums and bass, they know they're just back there doing their thing. And they, of course, there are jazz connoisseurs listening to them and they get to take solos, and that's good, but it's not quite the same level of pressure. Basses don't have to take solos, nor do drummers if they don't want to. Typically, piano players would be expected to. And even if we didn't, just the way we play is kind of like a solo, even when we're accompanying someone. So it's different. But for drummers specifically, there's one thing I would ask as a piano player that's played with many drummers, and that is to pay attention to your volume. I know this can be a sore topic for drummers because no drummer wants to play quietly all the time because it constricts your physicality and may impact your ability to play well. And drummers like to play loud. But you are the most powerful person in the ensemble in this regard. If you choose to play loud, no one will be able to hear themselves at all. And you have that power to make that happen. Playing by the principle that the better you can make other people sound, the better you will sound, is absolutely true of the drummer. If you are making other people sound good, people will think you are the best drummer in the world, and you don't have to do a whole lot. Therefore, crazy fancy fills and solos can be less valuable than good solid playing with the occasional smart fill. So if you want to show off and want to do lots of things, you have to find a way to do that in a way that makes room for other people on the bandstand. The thing is, very few people are going to blame the drummer when things go wrong. They're more likely to blame the piano player, even if the drummer is at fault. But the musicians on the bandstand tend to know. And this is not a position you want to find yourself in where people are talking about the drummer when the drummer's not in the room. So listen to the solos when you're playing and see what you can do to help. Now, I'm talking to the piano players, telling them to listen to you too, because soloists who don't listen to the drummer are making the hugest mistake of their life. It's got to mesh together like this, where everyone's listening to everyone else. But it's not often that the drummer is asked to listen to other people. The drummer is sort of seen as the foundation. Really, the foundation is all three of the rhythm section players, or four, with the bass and the drums equally having a role in keeping the time and setting the mood. And that being said, drummers, if you can possibly know the tunes you're playing behind, especially in jazz. In rock, you can get away with listening and kind of maybe, filling in when you need it. I'm not saying it's ideal, but I think you can get away with it more in rock than perhaps you can get away with it in jazz. Or should I say the other way around? Maybe you can get away with it in jazz more than with rock, but it's the price that you pay in jazz is greater. If you don't know the tune and you're just kind of making it up, even though no one will know what's going on, it will feel like everything is falling apart. Not just the feel of the tune, but the form. How long is the A section? How long is the B section? When does it turn around? If the drummer is just kind of floating away, doing whatever, it's easy for the musicians to get lost, even if they're good musicians. And remember that the rest of the band has to stay together. So know the tunes, and if you don't know them, start learning them. Now, bass players, I think you need my advice the least. Bass players of all the musicians I've met seem to know their job the best and have the least to prove. And I love bass players. And I love playing left-handed bass and getting to pretend like I am a bass player. That being said, of course, bass players, you want to know the tunes too, and bass players can't get away with faking it like drummers sometimes can, because if the bass player doesn't know the tune, boy, does the piano player get blamed because all the chords sound wrong. I had one bass player I played with who thought that as long as you played in the key of the tune, it didn't matter what notes you played. And that was the only time I've ever had to talk to a bass player about what they were doing. Speaking of talking, bass players, the only real advice I can offer you that you probably hadn't thought of is you should talk to people. Bass players, by and large, don't talk to people about what they do. They talk to other bass players. But people need to know your thought process. One of the most exciting things that a bass player and a piano player can do is lock together, but not necessarily lock together in strict time. As a piano player, I like to figure out which bass players like me to play just a little ahead of them, like microseconds, and which like me to play just a little behind them. And when you figure that stuff out, some magic happens. Like this tiny little thing, difference between the strict beat and where people are, creates this slight little unease, which is akin to making you laugh. It's just like, that's the true nature of swing. That's where the magic happens in jazz and in most music, is that tiny little bit of play that makes the audience just uncomfortable enough that they're like, what's going on? What's going on? And it brings tunes to life. Bass players, if you talk to people about what you do and what you like, you can facilitate that process. Give people a chance to know. Now, some people are not going to be receptive to you talking to them. I get that. Some people have no idea what they're doing at all in a jam session except just trying to make themselves sound as good as possible. But again, if you're one of those people that can talk, you can make a big difference. Bass players and drummers, I love you. Thank you for the work you do. Jazz fans, thanks for watching. I'm Adam, the Learning Coach. And if you have anything to add, put it in the comments below.